Hello, class. So today we're going to work on chapter 30, which is money growth and inflation. And we're going to see how money supply affects inflation and nominal interest rates. And we're also going to see if whether money supply affects real variables like the real GDP or real interest rates that we covered before. And then we're going to see a little bit how is inflation like a tax and what are the costs of inflation. So first, let's talk about the value of money. And this is one thing that we're first going to show using a graph how money can affect the price level. So let's say P is the general price level, and like the basket of goods that we measured using to find out CPI, and it's measured using some dollar value. So this 1 over P is the value of a dollar, which is measured in goods. So for example, if the basket contains a candy bar, then if price is $2 of that candy bar, then with a dollar you can buy half a candy bar. If the price rises to $3, now with a dollar you can only purchase a third of a candy bar. So as the price of the basket goes up, your dollar can purchase a smaller fraction of that basket. So increase in prices is basically inflation. So whenever inflation goes up, prices go up, and our dollar, the dollar we earn, is able to purchase fewer and fewer goods. So next we come to the quantity theory of money. This was first developed by many different economists actually, but one of the persons who actually formulated it was David Hume, who lived in, I believe, England in the 18th century. And later it was advocated by Milton Friedman, who was a Nobel Prize winner in economics, and he used to teach at the University of Chicago. And this basically says that the quantity of money determines the value of money. So if there are more money floating around, then we don't value it as much. And so the value of money falls. If there's less money, then we value that money a lot since the quantity is less, and so the value of money is more. Now we're going to study this using two approaches, a supply and demand approach that we're going to use first, and then using an equation. So first let's look at the money supply. In the real world, money supply is determined by mainly the Fed. As we said, Fed determines how much money is circulated in the economy. The banking system, by giving out loans, can determine money supply, and consumers. If we hold more money as cash, then there's the money multiplier will not work as much. But if the consumers hold less money as cash and put all the money in their banks, then there's a lot more money multiplier action going on, and so money supply then can increase. In this model, we're going to assume that the Fed actually knows exactly how much money it wants to control or how much money it wants to have circulating in the economy. So it fixes a certain fixed amount that this is how much the money I want to be circulating, and then does exactly a certain few steps to get that, achieve that goal. So on the other hand, let's see money demand. Money demand is how much money people want to hold in the most liquid form. That is, as close to cash as possible. Now it depends upon the price level. If prices go up, then that reduces the value of money because now we need more money to do our daily transactions. We need more money to buy our groceries or buy our gas, and so we can't save all our money in a savings account or in an investment fund. We have to use that money for our daily consumption. So the quantity of money demanded is negatively related to the value of money and positively related to the price. So if price goes up, we need to hold more money. But if price goes up, the value of money goes down. So as the value of money goes down, we need to hold more cash. Other things being equal, other things are like, your real income. If your income goes up, then that's a different story. Then you can actually save more money. If there are more ATMs in your area, then you don't need to carry as much cash. You can just go, whenever you need money, you just go to the nearest ATM and withdraw cash. Now, if we look at the money supply and demand diagram, on this side we have the value of money. So let's look at this. If this is the price level, of course, if price level is 2, then the value of money is 1 over 2. And that's how we get that number. If price level rises to 4, so here it's rising, then the value of money is 1 over 4. So as value of money goes up, then our price level falls if the value of money goes up. If price level goes up, then the value of money falls. So the Fed sets some value of money, some money supply, and it's fixed. So let's say it's fixed at $1,000. So if money supply or if money demand, we know, should be downward sloping. Why? Because as value of money increases, we need to hold less money. So quantity of money demanded will decrease. So the intersection of demand and supply basically determines the equilibrium value of money. And when we find the reciprocal of that, we get the equilibrium price level. Now, supposing the Fed increases money supply, okay, if the Fed thinks that, we need more money, then money supply will go up. Now, if that happens, well, the new equilibrium point is point B. Now, if there's more money, if you think about it intuitively, if there's a lot of money floating around, then the actual value of a dollar will not be as high, because now, if sellers think that if there's a region, people have more money to spend, then they're going to start charging a higher price. So when that happens, prices go up, and of course the value of money will go down. So as we see that, if money supply goes up, the value of money falls, and the general price level goes up. Why does this happen? Short version is, at initial price, so supposing the sellers don't know that money supply increased, an increase in money supply, of course, will cause an excess supply of money. Then people start get rid of their excess money by spending it or by loaning it to others. If I can't spend it, I save it in a bank, and the bank will give it to someone else for spending. As a result, what happens is the demand for goods goes up. So if we recall from chapter 4, people are having more money, their income is going up, so demand curve will shift to the right. But supply does not increase accordingly, because sellers are like, well, this, at first they might increase quantity supply, but then they're like, well, this much, it's just, money is a piece of paper, it doesn't have any value. So people are just spending money, not because they're wealthy, it's because they just have some extra pieces of paper. So other things happen in the short run, and actually we don't have time for studying them, but in macro theory, if you're interested, next semester, you can take macro theory, and they'll talk about what happens in the short run if money supply goes up. There could be some positive benefits, but this, in the long run, it doesn't have any effect. So nominal variables are variables using monetary units. So we talked about nominal GDP, nominal interest rates, and nominal wage, which is just basically how much you get paid per hour of work. So currently the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, so that is nominal wage. Real variables, on the other hand, are measured in physical units. So real GDP was one. We kept prices constant, and then we measured how much more does a country produce. We talked about real interest rates, where we said that nominal interest rate minus the rate of inflation gives us the real interest rate. And real wage is measured in output. So basically, how much, if I work an extra hour, how much more can I purchase? So prices are usually measured in terms of money. So we always have prices measured in dollar values, $5 or $10 or $7.59, something like that. Let's say price of a CD is $15, price of a pepperoni pizza is $10. A relative price is the price of one good relative to or divided by another good. So relative price of CD in terms of pizza would be 1.5 CDs per pizza, which means that if we look at that number, So we're saying that, okay, one pizza costs $10. If I wanted to purchase one CD instead of a pizza, I have to give up the consumption of 1.5 pizzas if I wanted to purchase one CD. So if we think pizza is a currency, because if we looked at money, money has fiat value, it doesn't have any kind of value in it, embedded in it. But pizza, let's say, it does have some value in it. So if I were using pizza as a currency, I would be using 1.5 pizzas to buy one CD. And so that's relative price. So if we have relative price, we can use any products, dollar value as relative price. I had a friend, whenever we used to go out to eat or watch a movie, he would measure everything in terms of the price of a 7-layer burrito. So he would be like, um, okay, well, if I go to the movies, and this was in Kentucky, so like price of a ticket was $7. A 7-layer burrito back in the day was like at 80 cents. So he would divide that and he would be like, well, I could purchase around 10 or 15 burritos with that price of a movie ticket and Coke. Is it worth going or not? So he would convert everything to something that he thought has stable value and then would measure according to that. Measure everything else's value according to that product, although it's a 7-layer burrito. But he used to do that. So that's what we're doing here too. We're saying that we're measuring the value of a CD in terms of how much pizzas do we have to give up. So relative prices are measured using physical units, so there are real variables. We have something very concrete here, trying to, in this case, pizza, that has a certain value. So we're measuring the value of other products using that of using the pizza. An important relative price is real wage. So nominal wage just tells us the dollar value. Okay, you're supposing you work $15 an hour. That's your nominal wage. Let's say the price level of a product, let's say a burger, is $5 and up per unit. So real wage is how much more can you purchase of a burger if you worked one extra hour. So in this case, you would just divide 15 by 5, and so you would get 3 units. So if you worked one extra hour, you can purchase 3 more burgers. So instead of saying like, oh yeah, if I work one extra hour, I'll get 15 extra dollars, you just say I will get 3 extra units of burgers. Now, here's the difference between classical dichotomy and that tells us the difference between real and nominal variables. It says that human and other classical economists believe that when you increase the supply of money, it affects nominal variables, but it doesn't affect real variables. And what do they mean by that? So if you increase money supply, nominal GDP will go up, but real GDP won't. If you increase money supply, then nominal wages will go up, but real wages won't. So why? Because if central bank doubles money supply, Hume and other classical contenders or thinkers believe that all nominal variables will go up by the same amount as the increase in money supply, but all real variables will remain unchanged. And this is known as the neutrality of money, that money does not affect real variables. So doubling money supply causes all nominal prices to double. So why does relative prices doesn't change? Let's look at the relative price of CDs in terms of pizza. Initially, it was $15 per CD and $10 per pizza. So if we wanted to exchange CDs with pizza, we needed 1.5 pizzas for one CD. Now, if we increase money supply, if we double money supply, then all the prices in the economy will double. So CDs now will become $30. Price of pizza will become $20. So yes, the prices went up, but that relative exchange how much pizzas do you have to give up to buy a CD stays the same. So the relative price remains unchanged if you increase money supply and all the prices go up by the same amount. Similarly, real wages don't change because if you increase wages and prices go up by the same percentage, then you just are able to purchase the same quantity before and after the price increase. So in this case, the quantity of labor does not change. Of course, if you are able to purchase the same amount as before, you're not going to work harder. Quantity demanded of labor won't change because firms won't hire more workers because demand hasn't changed. Prices of all the products went up by the same amount. So total employment doesn't change. So the same idea applies to employment of capital and other resources. So since employment doesn't change at all, so total output remains unchanged by the money supply. So nothing really changes, and that's what classical economists believe. If you increase money supply, it doesn't affect any real variables. It affects nominal variables. Prices go up, but since all prices go up, including wages, so none of the real variables change. Now, most economists believe that the classical dichotomy and the neutrality of money, these principles, they describe the economy in the long run. In the later chapters, we do talk about a little bit about short-run effects, but since we don't have much time in this course, so in macro theory, you will learn what happens in the short run. If you increase money supply, there may be some effect on certain real variables, but in the long run, that effect disappears. Now, we talked about the first one we looked at the quantity theory of money in terms of a graph. Now here we're going to look at it in terms of an equation. So we're coming up with this notion called velocity of money. The velocity of money is the rate at which money changes hands in a given year. So let's put in some notation. P we know as price. Y we have used before as real GDP. So P times Y gives us nominal GDP. It's basically converting real GDP to how much money today do you have to spend to purchase Y units of output. Let's say M is the money supply, and let's say B is the velocity. So the velocity is telling us if M is the money supply, then how much money, or how many times does money have to change hands in order to purchase P times Y amount of nominal GDP. So let's look at with some numbers. Supposing there's just one good, pizza. We just have one product. And let's say that in a given year, we produce 3,000 pizzas. Let's say the price of each pizza is $10. So we need $30,000 of money, of transactions to buy 3,000 units of pizzas. But let's say the money supply, the total amount of dollars that we have in the economy is $10,000. So we can't purchase, if we wanted to purchase all the pizza at the same time, we wouldn't have enough money to do that. Okay, so what we need to do is, well, if we divide that amount, so basically 30,000 divided by 10,000, which is 3, which means that let's say each of those $10,000 is in a $10 denomination. Then we're using that $10 to purchase one pizza, and then that $10 moves around 3 times in the economy, so that finally all $30,000 worth of pizza are traded in the market. There may be demand for 30,000 pizzas, but the money supply is not enough to cover all the transactions. What the velocity of money tells us is, in order for all the pizzas to be sold, all 3,000 pizzas at $10 per pizza, if we have $10,000 of money floating around, then each dollar has to move on an average 3 times, has to change hands, has to be in 3 different transactions for all the pizzas to be sold. So here again, average dollar was used in 3 transactions. Now if we plot these values over time, we see the velocity of money doesn't change much at all. It's very relatively constant. M2 measure, we talked about M2 money supply and nominal GDP. They pretty much go up hand in hand until 1990, then they kind of deviated, but they have an upward trend. So velocity of money is fairly stable over time. So if we look at this, and another way of writing this formula is if we multiply both sides by m, we get mv equals p times y. This is called the quantity equation of money. What this is telling us is that v is stable over time, so v doesn't really change. So any change in money supply, if we increase m, it causes nominal GDP, which is p times y, to change by the same percentage. So if money supply goes up by 50%, if v doesn't change, then, well, left-hand side must equal right-hand side, so p times y must go up by 50% too. According to classical economists, a change in money supply does not affect y, because money is neutral, and y, which is our productivity or GDP measure, depends upon technology and the resources available in the economy. So, like what we talked about, human capital, physical labor, physical capital, and natural resources that we talked about, and the level of technology in the economy. So if y is not affected, then any change in money supply will just increase p. So if we look at this, if we increase money supply, this doesn't change. Classical economists believe this doesn't change. So any increase in m will only increase p by the same amount. So rapid money supply growth will cause rapid inflation. If we increase money supply by 100%, all it will do is increase prices by 100%. Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is generally defined as inflation exceeding $50 or 50% per month. We talked about this principle way back in time, is that prices rise when government prints too much money. So whenever money grows a lot, whenever there is excessive growth in money supply, that always causes hyperinflation. The recent one we saw was in Zimbabwe. So large government deficits have created huge amount of money and have actually created very, very high inflation rates. So if we look at the price of US dollar in terms of Zimbabwe dollars, so US dollars price is relatively stable when you compare it with Zimbabwe dollars. We see that like over time, like literally within 6 or 7 months, price of the exchange rate of one Zimbabwe dollars to US dollars. So if you sold one US dollar, you would get 245 Zimbabwe dollars. By July of 2008, it rose to 26 billion. So there was a huge effect of inflation. And you had Zimbabwe dollars were being used in different ways other than in transactions. So people lost complete faith in their money. They would not use it to do transaction because there was no reason to do it. So if governments print a lot of money, and this happened not only in Zimbabwe, it happened in Israel, it happened in a lot of the Latin American countries like Peru and Brazil. It happened in Israel in the 1980s, in the Weimar Republic, which was the precursor to Germany in the 1920s. So inflation is like a tax. When tax revenue is inadequate, when governments don't have enough taxes coming in for expenditure, government may just print more money to pay for its spending. And almost all hyperinflation start this way, when governments start printing money without telling people that they're printing money to pay their expenses. Excuse me, because printing money doesn't really require any cost. And so when governments start doing that, well, at first people don't realize it, but then once people realize that, wait, money is just being printed by the government. It's not really the result of creation of wealth. So all it does is increase prices. The revenue from printing money is called inflation tax, because printing money causes inflation, which is a tax on everyone who holds money. Because if I hold $500 in my savings account, because the government printed money and reduced the value of money, my $500 in the bank will not purchase $500 worth of goods anymore. They will purchase something less, probably about a lesser value. Let's say $500 would purchase 500 loaves of bread. Next year, it's probably going to purchase just 490 loaves of bread. So that is like a tax to me, since I am not being able to purchase the same amount of goods. Excuse me. So it's like the government is taking away the value of money from me without literally taking away physical units of money from me. So in the US, the average around inflation is around 2 to 3% a year. So inflation tax in the US is about 3% of total revenue. What are the costs of inflation? Well, one is called shoe leather costs. It is because people, and I'm not sure why it's called shoe leather costs, but it's the waste of resources that you have to do because inflation doesn't let people hold more money. So you want to hold less money and you want to just go and spend the money, because it's better to buy goods than actually hold the money. So basically, if your money gets deposited in the bank, you have to make frequent bank travels, or go to your bank to withdraw the money, or go to the nearest ATM to withdraw the money. So that's actually an opportunity cost, because you're wasting your time, your resources. The bank has to pay the additional fee for your processing of your checks and ATMs. So all those things add up, and those are a waste of resources. The other is called menu cost. It's the cost of changing prices. So think about it, if you have a store like Walmart, if prices go up, you have to go and change the price of every single item on the store. If you have a store like Amazon, you have to update the prices every single month or every 6 months if inflation goes up very frequently. Or if you think about a restaurant, you have to print new menus. Well, catalogs aren't mailed as much, but you can think about it, catalogs need to be updated and mailed by stores and all those things. So those are costs, and those are borne by the firm. So if inflation is high, then these costs are also pretty high. So that's all we have for Chapter 30. Chapter 30 is done. Hope you have